Thank you for having me here. Culture is definitely a topic I'm pretty passionate about. I definitely feel that people join companies, stay at companies, and leave companies often because of the culture. So I was going to start off and talk about why I joined SurveyMonkey and how culture was a key point of that. I was in London at Ticketmaster. I was managing hundreds of people, and I knew I wanted to come back and do something more entrepreneurial. And I started talking to a bunch of different companies in Silicon Valley. And I met Dave Goldberg, who at the time was the CEO of SurveyMonkey, and was impressed with him right away, but still was like, surveys? That just doesn't sound that interesting. But I was going to fly out and meet the team and come for the interview anyway. And 2 days before I flew out for the interview, I realized I was pregnant. And I thought, okay, what should I do now? And I decided I was going to come anyway. I was going to meet the team. I met the board. I was very impressed with Dave, very impressed with the team, and I fell in love with the product. Like the idea of, you heard Elena speak earlier, but the idea of listening to people's voices, to use data to help make better decisions, it was something that I just was ecstatic by. But I didn't know what to do. So I got on the plane, flew back, and when I landed, there in my inbox was an offer from Dave. And I wrote him back. And I had a bunch of points about negotiating the offer. And then at the bottom, I said, oh, and I just found out I'm pregnant. And he wrote back within minutes. And he said, I am determined to build a company culture at SurveyMonkey where not only can we support women and support people raising and starting their families, we're going to build a great big business financially. And right then and there, I made the decision that I was going to join this company. I knew I wanted to work for this guy, and I knew I wanted to work for a company where the culture was going to be important. So there's no question. Here's a picture of I see some SurveyMonkey people here. So, but there's no question that the CEO sets the tone of the culture. And you as leaders, you as executives, you have to help with that and participate in that. I worked for Dave for 5.5 years, and he lived up to his word in every single way. We built a big business, and we built a great company and culture. And I'm going to talk about some of those lessons that I learned from him today. The first one is kind of this concept of no empty statements. You can't just have core values and statements. Here's obviously kind of an ironic one, but integrity was a key core value that Enron held. And it's easy, obviously, to think about if somebody embezzles money, what do you do? But it's thinking about what are your management principles on the front lines. So think about a salesperson who sells a product to somebody, even though they know that the customer is not a good fit for their customer, but they're making to make their quota. That's not a high integrity decision. An engineer who checks in code, even though they know it doesn't work, just to meet a deadline. That's not a high integrity decision. How do your policies, how does your management trading, how does your compensation, how do all of those things tie to your core value? Another example, people always talk about teamwork, working as a team. That's an important part of our culture. What's your compensation philosophy? If you have only performance-based compensation, there is no way you're going to build a collaborative culture where you're focused on having people be helpful. You have to think about, are you incenting people the right way to work as a team? Is part of your bonus structure that your company makes their goals, that your team makes your goals? Are there rewards and awards for people who are helpful as a team? So again, you have to think about not just what is this value and this principle that we actually want. What are the policies? What are the management training? What is the compensation philosophies and incentives that tie to those values? Because that's the only actual way that those values actually go through the organization. The second big thing I learned is that in any organization, no matter which organization it is, if you're trying to build product and technologies, a core value has to be on innovation or entrepreneurship. You have to be willing to take risks, right? Technology moves so fast in today's environment. You have to incent the entire population, the entire employee base to be willing to take risks. But for people to be willing to take risks, they need to know that it's okay to fail. So how do you create a company culture where it is okay to fail? The first is thinking about how do you put the right boundaries on that. And in one of the key things that Dave pushed on us was experimentation. You heard from Elena, but was also how do you make sure that everybody across the company understands the risks? And to understand the risks, you have to understand the metrics. But the second thing was how do you make sure you not only celebrate success, but you actually celebrate failure? Because to build a culture where entrepreneurship and innovation are allowed, it means people have to be willing to fail. I mean, Einstein's quote was something to the effect of, the person who didn't make any mistakes was the person who didn't try anything new. And so how do you allow people to fail? Well, if any of you have read anything about Dave, he loved poker. That meant we were constantly betting on the different A/B tests. Every month, either Elena, Dave, or I, we would stand up in front of the whole company and walk through the business metrics, but we'd also talk about A/B tests, and not just the ones that won, but also ones that failed. And sometimes Dave bet against the ones that won, sometimes I did, and it just meant that everybody in the company understood everybody was willing to make mistakes. Everybody was willing to put themselves out there. And you have to be willing to celebrate those failures. And if you want a culture where entrepreneurship, where innovation is important, that has to be a key philosophy. You know, the third thing is, and I learned this also by making mistakes along the way. We weren't perfect in building a culture at SurveyMonkey. I'm not going to be perfect at building a culture now. But the thing that I learned was that you have to continually ask and listen. I mentioned that one of our important philosophies or core values at SurveyMonkey was this idea of making sure people understood the metrics, making sure people understood the why they were doing what they were doing. One day I walked up to this engineer and I said to her, I was so excited, and I said, I'm so excited that you got that feature out the door. And she said to me, thank you, but why? And my stomach fell because I thought, oh my goodness, we've scaled to the point where now this engineer doesn't understand one of our core values. She doesn't understand why she's building what she's building. And so actually Will's in the audience here as well. He ran our product for SurveyMonkey. We talked about it, and he said the product team needs to work with the business analytics team, and we need to provide data back to the engineers of how things are doing. We need to make sure that information is being communicated. And so it's not that you always are building your culture right and that all your values are getting, perfectly done across the org, but you have to ask the employees on a regular basis. We obviously used to survey people on a regular basis at SurveyMonkey. But the other tool that I started was that about 3 to 6 months after people joined, I would take them for lunch. Obviously it started one-on-one and then moved to one-on-many as we grew. And I would always ask people a couple of key questions. Obviously, do you know what we're about? Do you know what we stand for? But also, what are the things that you think that we could be doing better? And what are the things you think that we're doing well? And asking those questions made sure that I understood as we were growing that what are the things that people value as part of our culture, and what are the things that's important that we keep reinforcing, but what are the things that we need to get better at? And we need to make sure that we're improving. Because as you grow and you scale, again, your values themselves may stay the same, but what are those policies that you're putting in place? What is the management? And as you've gotten layers of management, does everyone know how to make sure those values are being implemented throughout your company? And making sure that you're constantly asking and learning. Because otherwise, you sit down and, once a year and you're like, okay, here's our mission, here's our values, and you communicate it and you have some big party. And then 3 months later, it's like, are you actually living by it? So those are kind of the big things I learned, which is make sure that you don't have those empty statements. Make sure that you tie those different things to it. The second big piece is entrepreneurship and innovation is a really important part of any culture here, especially in a technology company. And then the third is you have to constantly be asking. I'm going to end on one of my other favorite Einstein quotes, which it is becoming appallingly obvious that our technology has exceeded our humanity. And my hope is you build good leaders and you build companies, that this statement is actually not true. That you can make sure that your humanity, that you can make sure that your culture of your company keeps up with the same size of innovation as your technology.
Thank you.